PPMTV, Free Palestine until the day that I die. What's going on right now is not right. We need to stop this shit. Anyways, another reaction. I'm posting non-stop Palestine reactions. We've got how Israel stole Palestine. This guy, this guy is fucking sick, man. I've been watching a few of his videos the last couple of days. I didn't know about him before. But honestly, he holds it down, man. And massive salute to you, man. Straight, bruv. Honestly, what's going on in this country right now, you lot would not understand. None of us would. I wouldn't, he wouldn't, none of us. Just the people there, man.
It's complicated. Well, at least that's what some people would like you to think. We've long been sold the narrative of a tit-for-tat skirmish of rockets, a real estate dispute, or even a centuries-old religious feud. There's so much more to the story.
There's so much more. So much more. Let me just turn it up a tad. So much more.
Story of Palestine, we all need to know. So, how did we get here? Let's take it back to the beginning. It starts with the end of a world war, Muslims fighting each other, and a problem.
And before we get into this, all these things about thousands of years ago with this dude and whatever times, but that was in the Torah. They ain't got no real evidence that ever happened. Let's just state that.
Made by the West only a century ago. So here's how the story begins. It's 1916 and the First World War is raging on. The Ottoman Empire is 617 years old at this point and is on the brink of collapse.
For this.
The British and the French had promised the Arabs sovereignty and Arab leadership over the Arabian Peninsula and the Levant if they helped them defeat the Ottomans. And so the Arabs said, okay, and so they helped them defeat the Ottomans. Now I know what you're thinking. What's this got to do with Palestine and the creation of Israel? Just trust me, we'll get there. Okay, so when the British and the French won, the Arabs wanted the land that was promised to them. But little did they know, the British and the French had this little top secret meeting. And in this top secret meeting, it was planned that the captured Ottoman province will be divided into areas of British and French control and influence. The British would receive Palestine, Jordan, and southern Iraq, while the French would control southeastern Turkey, northern Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. This was called the Sykes-Picot Agreement. But then the Arabs found out about this agreement, and they were shocked. They had been bamboozled and tricked. They thought that they were fighting a war in order to overthrow their non-Arab Muslim rulers, only to end up with, you guessed it, European colonial rulers instead. Anyway, that's a long story for another video. Now that the British occupy Palestine, something unusual is happening back in Europe. You see, the Zionist movement had been growing increasingly influential and lobbied hard to support the mass migration of Jews to Palestine and recognize a Jewish claim to the Palestinian land. And in 1917, Britain, out of nowhere, publicly declared its intentions of establishing a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. So the British just gifted Palestine.
He's telling me, I know a fair bit, but not as much as he's telling me, man. I'm glad I'm watching this.
A country which was made up of 90% Palestinians to European Zionists. They gave it just like you would give a box of chocolates. Historians still debate till this day why the British gave Palestine to Zionists. It's simply baffling. Now, at this point, the Jewish population in Palestine was less than 10%. So when the British started to facilitate the immigration of European Jews to Palestine from 1922 and 1935, the Jewish population rose to 27%. With the British mandate in full swing, mass European Jewish immigration meant that more land would be seized and the native Palestinian population grew increasingly worried. The Palestinians would demonstrate their concerns to their British overlords, but they wouldn't have it. European Jewish settlement was on the rise. The British proposed a partition of Palestine and even advised the forceful removal of the Arab population from their homes. And yes, this was their plan to resolve the issue. So the Palestinians naturally rejected this proposal and revolted against the British. The revolts were crushed violently, killing thousands of Palestinians. But the Palestinians wouldn't give up. They would continue their fight for independence, and the British were clearly fed up. So in 1947, the British decided to hand over their responsibility for Palestine to the United Nations. So basically, they just said, here, clean our mess. And so the UN proposed this ridiculous proposal again, where Palestine will be partitioned into a Jewish and
Ridiculous.
Arab
Fucking
state.
out of order.
Remember, Jews in Palestine only constituted 1/3 of the population,
Yeah.
most of whom arrived from Europe just a few years earlier. Yet, in this proposal, they were allocated 55% of the land. Feeling like they got a bad deal again, the Arabs rejected the proposal, and the Zionists accepted. However, here's the catch. The Zionists didn't agree to the proposed borders, and even campaigned for more land. So they agreed to an Israeli state, but didn't agree to the size of it, so they can just choose it for themselves. By 1948, Zionist militia would storm and capture Palestinian populated villages and cities,
Trust me.
leaving
People say the Arabs attacked first. Like, that's absurd and insane in the membrane. Whoever's saying that.
thousands of Palestinians homeless and landless. The Zionists
Like, if they went first, how did they end up, like, within 6 months, all their land got took off them.
to seize and
No.
cleanse as much land from Palestine before the British would officially withdraw their forces. And on the same day that they left, the Zionists proclaimed the establishment of the new Israeli state. Overnight, millions of Palestinians lost their country. And what's even more bizarre is that immediately the two superpowers, the United States and the
Honestly, it gets me angry.
Soviet Union, recognized the new state of Israel.
My
And
bad.
if it couldn't get any worse, May 15th, 1948 was perhaps one of the darkest days in Palestine's history. They called it the Nakba, or the catastrophe. To lose your country, your identity, and your home just like that
And these
is
people just had that happen from Hitler. That's the worst thing.
something truly horrifying. But that wasn't enough for those Palestinian men, women, and children. They had to be ethnically cleansed from their lands and driven into near total destruction.
Trust
See,
me.
the creation of the State of Israel didn't just mean that 1.9 million Palestinians were forced out of their homes. Didn't just mean that 78% of historic Palestine had been taken from its natives. Didn't just mean that 530 villages and cities were destroyed and ethnically cleansed. And didn't just mean the killing of 15,000 Palestinians in a series of mass atrocities. It means that it was the start of something even more horrifying for the Palestinian people. It signaled
Deep,
over
man.
70 years of occupation, home demolitions, arbitrary arrests, displacements, Israeli expansion, military checkpoints, construction of walls, discrimination, massacres, and bombing of innocent men, women, and children in their own homes. So no, it's not complicated. The Palestinians are a people who have been oppressed and had their lands taken away from them and have been suffering ever since. This is how the events of the past shape the conditions of today. This is why it is important to remember and reflect our history before it repeats itself.
Definitely.
Because Allah knows we don't need it to happen again in another part of the world. May Allah lift the pain and the struggles from our Palestinian brothers and sisters. Ameen.
Hit the sub button, man. Show some love. That was fantastic. I'm out of here. Salute.